All right, Mr. Ahmed here for Chapter 2. Going to remake a few of these videos for Chapter 2 since the note packet changed a little bit. So for 2.1, our essential question is, how do I write and use conditional statements? All right, how do I write and use conditional statements? With a question mark. So, going to be a lot of writing on this video, but a conditional statement has two parts. It has a hypothesis and it also has a conclusion. The hypothesis comes right after the word if. The conclusion comes right after the word then. All right, so what we're going to look at here is we're going to highlight the hypothesis and the conclusion. So the hypothesis comes after if. All right, it does not include the word if, it's what comes after it. So this statement says if the forecast is for rain. So the forecast is for rain, then I will take an umbrella. So the conclusion in yellow will be I will take an umbrella. Does not include the word then. And we have identified both the hypothesis and the conclusion. All right, so fairly straightforward on that. Not all statements are going to come in if-then form. So if you have to change it to if-then form, that's the way we're going to phrase all of these statements as an if-then. You have to identify which part is the hypothesis. So notice this says you can only go to the mall if you finish your homework. So here's that keyword if. That tells me that is the hypothesis. So for me to put this into if-then form, I would have to say if you finish your homework, I'm abbreviating homework HW, comma, then you can go to the mall. Now notice I do not change this sentence around. We take these phrases for what they are. Not all of them are necessarily 100% true. Take them for what it is when it is written. So next part says identify the hypothesis and the conclusion for each statement. So I'm going to skip the writing piece to try and speed up this video here a little bit. And I am just going to highlight the hypothesis and the conclusion. So my hypothesis is going to be highlighted in green again. So the hypothesis is what comes after if. So if a polygon has 6 sides, that is the hypothesis. I'll write this one out just to include, don't use the word if. All right, a polygon has 6 sides. Then it is a hexagon. So the conclusion in yellow is it is a hexagon, which that statement kind of makes sense. All righty. So this one is not in if-then form. So the first thing I need to do is change it to if-then form. So here's my keyword if, there it is. So if it's even. So in this case, I want to determine what its is. Its is a number. So I'm going to say if a number is even, then it's divisible by 2. And we have it in if-then form. The hypothesis is whatever comes after if. So in this case, I'm not going to rewrite it this time. Hypothesis is a number is even. The conclusion in yellow is whatever comes after then. And in this case, it's divisible by 2. Okay, so we have identified both the hypothesis and the conclusion. Next step here is negating. Negating means we're going to make a statement its opposite. This is done by inserting the word not or taking out the word not. We do not change up the statement, all right? So when I negate something, I do not just try and say something that's opposite, all right? If I were to say if, or I'm just going to actually not over there, the ball is red. For me to negate that, I don't say the ball is green, okay? I say the ball is not red. That is the negation of the statement, the ball is red. I inserted the word not. If this was the original statement, the ball is not red, for me to write the negation, I would say the ball is red. So that is how we negate something, is either by inserting the word not or take out the word not. That is a negation. For me to say the negation of it is cloudy, I don't say it's sunny. The negation of it is cloudy is it is not cloudy. Okay? So that is negating. So, related conditionals. This is probably the meat and potatoes of today. The process of changing our original conditional statement. And we are going to look at the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. In order to write the converse, I exchange the hypothesis and the conclusion. So our original statement here says, if you live in Moorhead, then you live in Minnesota. For me to write the converse, I change it. I would say, if you live in Minnesota, then you live in Moorhead. So I switch the order. Abbreviate Minnesota, MN, comma, then you live in Moorhead. That is the converse. I have switched the order. So the converse, I switch. All right? Well, side note there, switch them. Inverse. I go back to my original statement again, and I negate both the hypothesis and the conclusion of the conditional statement. So the conditional, that is the original. All right, the original one. What did we start with? So I got to go back to what we started with. All right, so for me to negate this, I would say if you live in Moorhead. For me to negate if you live in Moorhead, I would say if you don't live in Moorhead, or if you do not, then you don't live in Minnesota. So that is the inverse. I negated both. That is how I remember inverse. Negate both. The contrapositive is done by exchanging and negating the hypothesis and conclusion of the original statement. So I got to go back to the beginning. All right, so in this case, my shortened version is switch and negate. So I flip the order, switch them, and negate both. That's how I remember. So for me to switch this and negate it, I would say if you don't live in Minnesota, then you don't live in Moorhead. All right, so that is the contrapositive. So some extra practice problems here is to write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of the conditional statement. All right, so we're going to go on to the next one. If a number is divisible by 4, then it's divisible by 2. The converse, I have to switch them around. So I would say if it is divisible by 2, it is a number. So I'm going to insert number there. So if a number is divisible by 2, then it is divisible by 4. And that is the converse. Inverse, negate both. So back to the original statement. If a number is not divisible by 4, then it is not divisible by 2. Okay, and the contrapositive, switch and negate the original. So I would say if the number is not divisible by 2, then it is not divisible by 4. Okay, So converse, inverse, contrapositive. My recommendation here is hit pause, give this one a try, and then come back to check your work. All right, hopefully you had some success here. So converse, have to switch. So I would say if the angles are congruent, I'm going to use the congruent sign for congruent. So if the two angles are congruent, then they have the same measure. Had a little struggle fitting that in there, but that is the word measure. Sorry about that, a little bit sloppy, I ran out of space. Inverse, negate both. So if two angles don't have the same measure, then they are not congruent. Going to use the congruent symbol again for congruent. And the contrapositive, switch and negate. So now I'd have to say if the two angles are not congruent, then they don't have the same measure. And I wrote measure a little bit neater that time. All righty, so that is the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive. And that'll wrap it up for 2.1, Part A.